Okay, so I chose to do my presentation on bacteria and archaea, and it is chapter 4 and it's by Juliana Stanley. And the reason that I chose to do this one is because if you learn the relationship between bacteria and archaea, it kind of reveals how things are formed in the universe. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, so starting off, we have bacteria. Says with their versatility and adaptable structure, bacteria have been able to live for many years in extreme environments. They're all comprised of cytoplasm, cell membrane, ribosomes, chromosomes, and occasionally a surface coating. So bacteria are just simple beings. They have no nucleus. Okay, so continued. They are capable of reproduction, metabolism, and nutrient processing, which I think is pretty cool considering they're just really simple beings. When in a group setting, they can communicate via electrical charges and nanowires, appendages that are used to transfer electrons onto metal and can also be used to exchange nutrients. So bacteria can survive alone or with other microorganisms. So that's pretty straightforward considering everything that they have. I think it's pretty cool that when they're in a group setting, they can communicate via electrical charges. Um, and since they're capable of reproduction, they do tend to reproduce pretty fast. Okay, so bacteria can come in many different shapes and sizes. And that kind of reveals their ability to resist harmful environments. You know, they can kind of manipulate themselves, which I think is really cool. Some specific structures that can be found are the following. Flagella, they have a whip-like appearance, allowing the propulsion of the bacteria through the liquid. Pili, allow bacteria to stick to one another. Fimbriae, allow the bacteria to adhere to a surface, and the cytoskeleton maintains shape and movement. So in the next slide, I will have an illustration of what a regular bacteria looks like. Okay, so as you can see in the background of this slide, under an electron microscope, the bacteria can be seen as three-dimensional. So you have your cell wall, you have your capsule, your DNA nucleoid, your plasma membrane, your mesosome, your ribosome, cytoplasm, and bacteria flagellum, which I think this is the most interesting part. It kind of allows the bacteria to um, pull itself through that liquid. But I think this gives a really good idea of the simplicity of it, although it does contain a lot of um, organelles. Okay, so they come in many different shapes. So the first one is the coccus. It's spherical, and here's a demonstration of it down here. And then you have your rods, and they're longer than the spherical. And then you have your curved. So they kind of resemble the rods, but they're curved in the middle. So this is a good kind of illustration here. As you can see, it's curved right there. Okay, so here's a different shape. Um, this is a bacteria, and it's called a spirillum. So it's long, but if it spins in the middle, that's what gives it its name. So it's got a unique shape to it. It kind of looks like a corkscrew, um, but I think that one's probably my favorite. I think it's pretty cool. Okay, so this one is kind of like the spirillum, but it's a spiraceae. It's a rigid helix that is twisted twice. And like I said, it kind of looks like the spirillum. But you can kind of see where it's twisted around there twice. It's kind of got like another layer, it kind of looks like. But this is a good picture, so you can get the idea. Okay, so pleomorphism, the phenomenon in which the shape of a single species vary. So I think this is a good picture that kind of illustrates that. This is all of the same species, but they all have different shapes. So you can see how much that varies. I mean, you have a circular object here and an oval-like object that's right next to it, and they all look different. Okay, so then you have your arrangements. So you have your cocci, it's single or in pairs. Your tetrads, group of 4 in irregular clusters or chains of cells, and sarcina, 8 or more cells. So I put a little chart right here in the upper right hand corner. So you have your coccus. Here's a single coccus. It's just a little circle. It's a little sphere. And then your diplococcus. That's a pair of 2 cocci. Um, your tetrad, grouping of 4 cells arranged in a square. Streptococcus. That's your chain of cocci. Staphylococcus. That's your cluster of cocci. Bacillus, single rod, and your Streptobacillus, that's your chain of rods. So as you can see, that's how much it varies between each one. Okay, so I think this is one of the most interesting things on the slideshow, is your biofilms, consisting of different types of organisms. Access to food, water, and a good atmosphere aids their survival. So you can see the complexity of this biofilm. It's just got so many organisms living inside of it, and their survival is easy. You know, they succumb to its conditions and are able to reproduce and live happily, either in a community or on their own. Okay, so then you have your cell envelope. So this is a structure, and it's composed of your cell wall and your cytoplasmic membrane, and some consist of an outer membrane. So this is a good representation of it. So you have your outer membrane and your inner membrane, and there's a layer. You can see a layer, how it's cut open like that. It kind of gives a good representation of how important that cell wall is. It keeps all of the things inside, and it um, allows certain things to pass through its wall. Okay, so Hans Christian Graham, he was a famous scientist that developed a staining technique that differentiates 2 groups of bacteria. So gram-positive is an envelope consisting of 2 layers. Gram-negative is an envelope consisting of 3. So here's the different kind of staining techniques, and these are purple and pink. Okay, so your cell wall. This helps the shape and the structure of the cell, and you can kind of see a representation of that here. Okay, so lying just beneath the cell wall is your cytoplasmic membrane. So this structure is one of the most important things that a cell can have. So it's selectively permeable and allows certain things to pass through its walls, um, and excrete things from its walls. But it has many different um, openings and things like that to help it differentiate the things that it's excreting and taking in. So I think that's pretty cool to see, and I had a little illustration here to help you understand. But that's really interesting to see how complex it is. Okay, so eukaryotes. Um, Discoveries reveal that eukaryotic cells appeared 2 to 3 billion years ago. Habitats and diverse beings were created from eukaryotes. So they're very complex structures. So they do consist of a flagellum, cytoplasm, plasma membrane, nucleolus, nuclear envelope, and they do have a nucleus apart from bacteria. So they have the nuclear pore and rough endoplasmic reticulum, smooth endoplasmic reticulum, centrosome, microfilament, ribosome, mitochondrion, microtubule, lysosome, peroxisome, Golgi complex, and the cilia. So just off the bat, this picture reveals how complex compared to the bacteria these things are. And since they do have a nucleus, that's where they store their DNA. That makes it all the more complex. Okay, so the timeline. So it seems that the first eukaryotic cell were single and then they eventually build. Some cells within the colonies became specialized to perform a specific function in their colony. So examples are oxygen utilization, feeding, and reproduction. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, so building on a cell, you have your tissues. So these are a grouping of cells that perform a specific function. So these can be found all throughout your body. It's what makes up our organs. And they're deeply compacted of cells. And here's a microscopic view of the tissues. So they did have different types of cells that make them up, and each tissue in your body has different structures that make up its function. So you can see the different types of cells here, and you can see how really compact they are. So I think that's pretty cool to see. Okay, so then building upon the tissues, as stated before, you have your organs. So our body is comprised of so many different types of organs to help us carry out our daily living. Um, and as you can see, they're all kind of formed differently here. So the cells form together in their own specific ways to form each unique organ. And you have your lungs and your heart and your brain, and your bladder. But I think that's pretty cool to kind of note the complexity of our bodies and how each organ works together to allow us to live each and every day. So I think that's pretty amazing to know. And it all comes from a single cell. So without cells, we couldn't be alive. So I think that's pretty cool. Okay, so there are three classifications of the eukaryotes that are studied a lot. Um, so you have your fungi. So there's many different types of fungi, but I just kind of added a picture here. You have your mushrooms and things like that, but they're studied a lot in eukaryotes. They're very complex. Okay, so the next thing you have is your protozoa. These are kind of single creatures living on their own, and they're also eukaryotes. So I think they swim around and they have their own unique builds, which aid them in their environments to perform their specific functions. But they're all different sizes and shapes and have different characteristics. Okay, so lastly, you have your helminths. So they're kind of worm-like beings, and they're also very complex. But they're also eukaryotes. But I think that's pretty interesting to see all the different types of eukaryotes and how they each play a role in our bodies and our function, and not even in our bodies, but in other things in the earth as well. But I think that's pretty interesting to see. But yeah, they're longer and they're worm-like creatures.